Welcome back to the deep dive. We're jumping straight in today with a bunch of recent sources, mostly pulled from CoinMarketCap, covering, well, today, June 17th, 2025, and also yesterday.
Hmm.
And our mission, really, is just to cut through all the noise, pull out the interesting bits, the stuff you need to know to get you up to speed on what's happening in certain corners of the crypto world right now.
Yeah, like a quick update without digging through everything yourself.
Exactly. And we've got quite a range here, specific token moves, some corporate strategy stuff, regulatory points, even some like really niche applications.
And looking at a daily snapshot like this, it's actually super valuable.
Yeah.
It just shows the sheer density, the variety of things happening all at once.
Yeah.
It's like a little window hinting at maybe bigger trends or shifts happening across the whole ecosystem.
Right. Okay, let's get into it then. Unpack these sources. We saw a piece focusing specifically on Uniswap. It was marked as a guest post by the News Crypto. The headline was something like Uniswap, UNI, price eyes, $10 mark amid TVL and user activity surge. So what were the key drivers they mentioned?
Well, this source points right at a pretty significant jump in total value locked TVL and also a surge in just, user activity on Uniswap itself.
Okay.
And for a decentralized exchange, that's a really fundamental signal, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Higher TVL, that means more liquidity, right? Makes it better for trading.
Precisely. More liquidity attracts more traders.
Mm.
And then more user activity means, well, more trades happening, more fees being generated, generally just more people actually using the platform. It shows growing adoption.
So basically, the platform's core job, its usage, is growing in a way you can actually measure, and that's being tied to maybe the UNI token going up.
Exactly. For a token like UNI, its value is often, connected to how well the underlying platform is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if adoption is growing, like the TVL and activity suggests,
Mm-hmm.
that builds a strong story and narrative for why the price might appreciate. But as the source wisely noted, DYOR.
Always do your own research, absolutely. Okay, so stepping away from just Uniswap, what else kind of jumped out from these sources? Any other market moves or specific token stuff?
Yeah, there were a couple of interesting price points mentioned. AltLayer's token, ALT, it apparently had a really sharp rally. The source said it was up like 35% on Monday, June 16th.
Wow, 35%. Did they say why?
Yeah, the catalyst cited was pretty clear, getting listed on Upbit, which is, a major exchange in South Korea.
Oh, okay. The classic exchange listing effect, that can definitely move the needle, at least for a bit, gives people more access.
Exactly. More access, more liquidity in a new market. And Chainlink, LNK, also got some attention.
Right.
Sources mentioned it moved up about 2.93%, bringing the price to around $13.69. And the interesting part was why watchers were paying attention.
Okay.
They mentioned an emerging technical pattern and this sort of growing feeling that momentum was coming back.
Technical patterns, like chart stuff. And I think I saw one analyst was aiming much higher for Link, something like $32, $38.
Yes, exactly. The source specifically mentioned an analyst eyeing that 32, 38 dollar range. And what's interesting there is how you see technical analysis, reading the charts, mixing with just general market sentiment, both influencing predictions and kind of building that narrative around where a token might go.
Fascinating how those things interact. Okay, shifting gears completely now. There was a pretty big corporate story in there too, right? Something about Bitcoin and how companies are maybe thinking about it differently. Metaplanet.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. Metaplanet really ramped up its Bitcoin holdings. The sources said they passed the 10,000 Bitcoin mark total.
Wow, 10,000 Bitcoin. That's a serious allocation for a company treasury.
It really is. And they detailed a specific buy recently, about $117 million used to acquire another 1,112 BTC.
Okay, and didn't the sources add some context, like a comparison?
They did, yeah. They noted that Metaplanet's Bitcoin holdings actually went past Coinbase's own corporate stash.
Whoa.
And to keep this going, apparently they launched a $210 million bond offering specifically to support buying more Bitcoin.
Okay, so this isn't just dipping a toe in. This is like a full-on strategy.
It seems like a very dedicated, aggressive strategy.
Hmm.
Bitcoin is a core treasury asset. It definitely makes them stand out among publicly traded companies doing this.
Yeah, that sends a strong message about their view on Bitcoin long-term.
Okay, so from corporate buys to the regulatory side, what was mentioned about Senator Warren and stablecoins?
Right, the sources picked up on a warning from Senator Warren regarding a piece of proposed legislation called the Genius Act.
Okay, and what was the warning about?
Her concern, as reported in the source, was that this act could potentially open the door for, and I think the quote was, tech billionaires to create stablecoins that track people's spending.
Hmm. Okay. So the focus there is privacy, potential surveillance.
It seems to be, yeah. The report highlighted that specific worry that the technology behind stablecoins, especially under certain rules, might enable tracking of, individual spending habits.
Right. So the source presented it as this intersection of like what the tech could do versus the policy debates around financial privacy and the risks of surveillance. We're just reporting what the source said here, of course.
Gotcha. No, it's interesting to see those regulatory concerns surface as the tech develops. And then shifting, again, different sector entirely. Music industry, blockchain being used there.
Yeah, I mentioned a company called Vibrate. They're offering blockchain-powered music analytics, apparently for over 11 million artists.
Music analytics on the blockchain, how does that work? What's the angle?
Well, the source noted it helps artists, but also it's used for analyzing sort of community reactions. Seems like it's using blockchain for maybe data transparency or tracking engagement in the music market in a new way.
Interesting. So taking blockchain beyond just finance again.
Exactly. It's a good example of how people are exploring it for totally different industries, trying to find new ways to provide data or tools, in this case for music and artists.
Cool. Okay, and one last snippet from the source's prediction markets. Something about geopolitics.
Yes, Polymarket was mentioned. Specifically, activity around betting on a potential U.S. strike against Iran.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what happened with the bets?
Well, what was notable was the volatility. The odds of the bets on that outcome happening, they apparently surged up to 67% and then dropped back down pretty quickly.
So a really fast swing in what the market or the bettors thought was likely.
Yeah, it kind of shows how these platforms can act almost like a real-time sentiment gauge, capturing those immediate reactions or maybe speculation around big global events.
Right.
And that rapid swing suggests things were pretty volatile. Maybe information was changing fast or people were just reacting very strongly to the news flow.
Okay, so quite the mix then.
It really is. I mean, think about it. In just this one snapshot from CoinMarketCap, you've got Uniswap showing fundamental DeFi growth. You've got AltLayer reacting to an exchange listing, Metaplanet making a huge corporate Bitcoin bet, Senator Warren raising regulatory flags on stablecoins, Vibrate exploring music analytics with blockchain, and Polymarket reflecting volatile geopolitical sentiment.
Yeah.
It just paints a picture of how incredibly broad and dynamic the whole crypto space is on any given day. All these different forces, tech, markets, corporate moves, regulation, new ideas, all happening at once.
It definitely feels like a microcosm, doesn't it? So just to recap for you listening, we touched on that Uniswap growth story, the price action for AltLayer and Chainlink, Metaplanet's huge Bitcoin accumulation, Senator Warren's stablecoin warning, Vibrate using blockchain for music, and that Polymarket activity. Again, the idea wasn't to make you an expert overnight on any one thing, but more to give you that quick shortcut, surface the key developments that popped up in these particular sources.
Yeah, and maybe just to leave you with a final thought, building on that diversity we just saw, think about how wildly different all those activities are. A DX swapping tokens, a company adding Bitcoin to its balance sheet, a senator worried about legislation, a music platform using analytics, a prediction market on world events.
Right. They seem almost totally unrelated on the surface.
Exactly. But they're all part of this broader crypto ecosystem, all happening concurrently, showing up in the news on the same day. So the question to maybe chew on is, how do these incredibly different pieces actually influence each other? How do they shape the overall direction, the public perception, and maybe even the adoption of this whole space?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. How do all these disparate threads weave together? Great point. All right, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again soon to unpack another set of sources for you.